Hello everyone, my name is David. My co-authors are O.C. Mokrin, who's here in attendance, the lead author, and our friend Joel. Um, the main idea, as you can see from the title, has to do with emotions as they're expressed online, but we really have one particular sort of insight that we sort of elaborate and cultivate, and we think it's interesting. The social psychologists inform us that people enjoy sharing experiences, and particularly they enjoy sharing emotional experiences. When they had an experience that affected them emotionally, they want to share it with others. First, they want to have experienced it with others, but if they experienced it alone, they want to at least retell it to others. Sharing it with friends later is actually considered by some to be part of the continuation of the experience itself as they relive it in the retelling of it. Now, online reviews, we may think of in their sort of functional utilitarian aspect, that they tell us how good something is, but they are, of course, that people are sharing. And the first sort of insight here is that, well, if online reviews are a form of sharing, we might expect, since when people share, one of the things they really like to share is emotional experiences. They may be sharing through their reviews emotional experiences that they've had. The basic hypothesis, the one central idea of all of our empirical work, is that online reviews reflect the emotional experience that someone had while they were experiencing the thing that they're reviewing. So it's fairly known that online reviews may contain words that reflect emotions, but we're really saying something a little bit specific. Most of prior research that looks at reviews looks really at the sentiment that's being expressed towards the thing. I liked it or didn't. Or if you break it out into emotions, I loved it, or I was surprised by how good that was. Those are one kind of emotions that much of the literature thinks of when we think about online reviews. We're talking about something else that we claim is also in there, and that is emotions that were evoked by the experience, emotions that I experienced at the time I was using that item or watching that show or movie or hearing that music. So on the one hand, it would be an emotion like I loved that movie, but we're talking about the surprise or the love that I experienced while watching a movie, and I'm falling in love my own self. Uh, right? Or I'm very sad that something horrible has happened to a character. Emotions experienced during the experience itself. When we began getting deeper into this research, we realized that the distinction wasn't really crystal clear enough. It wasn't sharp enough. We would find ourselves saying, well, it's the difference between the emotion about the movie and the emotion that came up from the movie. And that wasn't solid enough to distinguish between emotions based on the preposition. Is the preposition about or is the preposition from? People would challenge us exactly where the dividing line was. And so we went back to the literature, the social sciences. Emotions, first of all, it's interesting to know, are considered by most theorists in social science and emotions research as having a target, and that this is what distinguishes it from a mood. A mood is somehow some general state. It doesn't have to do with some particular target. An emotion, according to most theorists of emotion, has an object, a target. It's an emotion vis-a-vis something. And that allowed us to make this distinction. Typically, we think of reviews, we think of emotions towards the movie artifact. I love that movie. I'm so angry that they let that director cast that person in that role like that. We're talking about the object of the emotions we're thinking is in there, is in the reviews, is emotions towards the characters in the movie, or emotions towards our own loved ones, or people close to us, our own people in our own memories that we're actually reliving when we're watching the movie. That is the object of the emotion that we're interested in. Our hypothesis is that those emotions, emotions towards the characters or towards people in our own lives, that a signal somehow online reviews contain a reflection of those emotions as well, not just emotions of the kind, I hated that movie. And that using our method, which is really fairly simple lexical method, one can detect and quantify reliably that signal. we might have done this on online reviews for a variety of products, but we chose reviews of movies. Why? Because as you understand, well, as the literature also describes movies as emotion generating machines. That's what they do. You go in there and you get an emotional experience. You want to cry, you get that. You want to be scared out of your wits, you get that. That's what they do. And so for all products that we might have chosen, it's particularly salient for this particular product, but maybe experience goods generally, probably vacuum cleaners less. So there's a certain limitation to what we're doing, but this is what we chose to study. So most of our empirical work, this is the main idea. Most of the empirical work is designed to establish that the way people express themselves when they write reviews contains also a signal of their emotional experience that they had. We used the IMDb data set, began with many millions of movies. We ended up with 3,000 movies that had sufficient reviews for us to feel the data was reliable. So about 3,000 movies of various genres. The basic technical approach is simple. I'll explain it in 30 seconds. I hope it's lexical. That means first we adopted one of the models of emotions, which is there are 8 basic emotions: anticipation, fear, disgust, etc. It's Plotchik's wheel of emotions. And there's a book, a lexicon, the NRC lexicon, that tells you each word in the English language, which of those, there could be more than one, which of those emotions it's associated with. And it's just 1 or 0. It either is or isn't associated with that emotion. And so we take all the reviews for a given film, put them in a bag, shake it up, pipe it through. We find the words that are associated with some one or more emotion, and we tally up all the reviews for Pulp Fiction, right? How many fear-related words were in there? How many anger-related words were in there? And we get these vectors. It's very simple. You can play a little bit with how you normalize, and you can aggregate if you want to look at all the films in a genre. When we construct these vectors, we call these the emotional signature of that movie. That is, we claim that in there you get a sense of the emotions that that movie triggers in people when they watch it. That's what we claim. The rest of the empirical work is designed to substantiate that claim. And here's sort of the outline of the list of empirical sort of tests that we did. The first sort of test is sort of manual. We just looked at many of these signatures and compared them with what we know about the movie. And you expect a Disney movie, you expect joy and la 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 to come up using our method, and it does. And you expect different kinds of emotions to come out from our method for The Devil's Rejects, a sort of satire horror film. So just in terms of face validity, things looked right. Okay, but that gets you only as far as it gets you. This is kind of interesting. We looked at the emotional signatures of sequels and plotted them one on top of the other. And it actually is known, there's actually, believe it or not, literature in the humanities on what sequels are. Okay, so just to read off the top of that slide, sequelization is as a form of repetition compulsion to re-experience the original, I'm adding the original film. That's what a sequel is, to re-experience the same emotions. And there you go, you look at a plot like that, and every one of the Harry Potter movies, some were more successful than others, some were a little bit darker than others. They hit the exact same emotional points using our method. Using our method. That means this plot came out of just taking the reviews and churning it through the machine. So this to us is another validation that we're not just getting whether people loved or hated the movie, but something to do. This makes sense that sequels would land on top of each other in one of these charts. By the way, this way of depicting these emotions vectors in one of these sort of radar charts, that's a paper that was published separately as a neat visualization of these vectors. The next thing we did, this is the test that we did. That's nothing much to look at. I'll just talk you through it in 20 seconds. It's the most sort of direct frontal attack to sort of prove that what we did works, but it's a little bit artificial. We did an NTURC experiment with people that we tested to see whether they actually had seen a bunch of movies. And we asked them to recollect what emotions they felt when watching the movie. So it's artificial and it's not real time. We're asking them to recollect. But it's directly, explicitly asking them, what emotions did you feel? And then we compare that to the emotion vectors that we get without asking anyone, just processing reviews, without asking anyone directly what emotions they experienced. And for most of the movies, you see really an unbelievable correlation there. The next sort of test that our idea sort of works was, and this starts to get interesting if you're interested in movies, uh, predicting genre. That means, well, okay, is it the case that really what a genre is a set of predictable set of emotions? We think it may be. And if it is, we expect you could identify or predict, so to speak, in machine learning talk, um, the, uh, the genre from looking at the emotional signature. And you can with also unbelievable sort of F1 measures or area under the curve measures with a simple logistic regression without going too crazy with the machine learning, just using these vectors. You could see from the data on top here that's what sort of the input data looks like. On average, you can see that comedies on average have numbers for the different emotions that are different from drama or different from horror. And this is interesting, for example, because there is no real good definition for what even is a genre. It's quite a complicated area. And we're proposing that maybe one way of adding to the literature on what a genre is thinking about it as a thing that evokes a set of emotions. That's a genre. Out of all those different empirical methods, each one of which is a sort of a type of sort of validity check, criterion related validity, construct related validity, face validity for those of you from the social sciences. We feel that we're very well convinced that in these reviews, without asking anyone what their emotional experience was explicitly, you can pick it up what emotions a film evokes by reading reviews. In terms of the hypothesis, yes, the idea of this is a meaningful thing to talk about the emotions that one experiences, and that this simple method can pick it up. We think maybe there's something interesting here about even defining what a genre is, not just predicting it, but defining what a genre is based on the emotions that it evokes. And finally, for future work, we must admit that it's true that some of those emotions words really do represent, I hated that film. In that case, it's not you hated the villain, or right, or if you're sad because it reminds you, of your own family tragedy, that's fine. But you also may be sad to see how that great director has been producing junk lately. Those are two very different meanings of sad. And we cannot deny that the first is in there. People do write, I love this film. And in that particular case, the word love doesn't refer to what I'm thinking of. It's not how you well up with emotion when you remember your first love from watching the Titanic. It's just you love the film. So there is both. And we've begun to scope out some kind of sort of basically probabilistic method for identifying the model, for teasing out the two. It's possible, it can be done. We need one more good student to do that. Thank you all for your attention. Joel, I think Joel is not here. OC is here, she's the lead author. This paper was published in Information Retrieval, a little bit sort of text related journal, a little bit more than a sort of network related journal, but thank you for